Hello, welcome to Ad Age's 20-minute take presented by Verizon Media. I'm John Dioso. I'm the editor of Ad Age Studio 30. 20-minute takes is our new series. It just launched last week, where we just offer advice to marketers and brands out there and what to do during this incredible time. And we've been lucky to be joined by leading executives from Verizon Media to help us along the way, and a nice little coffee break for you in the middle of the day and just get back to the rest of your work day, whatever else you're doing today. Our social media hashtag is hashtag #AdAge20MinuteTake. And I'd like to introduce our guest today, Mike Brunick, who's from Verizon Media. Hey, Mike.
Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. Just tell me a little bit about what you do, what you do at Verizon Media.
Sure. So we're one of 3 business units within Verizon: the Verizon Media, Verizon Consumer Group, and Verizon Business Group. We're an ad tech company, media platform, and a publisher, publishing brands like Yahoo and HuffPost and several others. And I run what's called our ad partnerships team, which is the monetization and strategy unit of our managed partners, companies like Microsoft, where we work with them across their programmatic and Xbox business.
Great. All right. Well, as I said, this is a new series that we've started called 20-minute takes. We just launched it last week. The first episode was on news trust and brand safety. The second episode was on riding the streaming wave. And this episode today is called Are You Game? Which kind of takes off a little bit from where we started talking a little bit about streaming gaming last week. Mike, are you a Sopranos fan?
I am a Sopranos fan, yeah.
You remember there was an episode once where Tony says, since time immemorial, what two businesses have been traditionally recession-proof? And he said,
"Oh boy, you're going back ways. If you went Game of Thrones, I probably would have had it in a second. You're going back in history here.
Certain aspects of show business and our thing."
Okay, fair enough. We're going to
talk about certain aspects of show business. Now we all know. that, since this thing started, I think there have been a lot of stories and a lot of people have predicted that streaming video would go up a lot. So you think about Hulu or Netflix or whatever. But surprisingly enough, one thing has completely outpaced them by a long shot, and that's gaming and streaming gaming. So explain why do you think that is?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I mean, gaming is really, it's a living room device, right? In most cases, at least console-based gaming, and that turns it into a full family affair. So you've got a device is connected to the living room television. You've got a lot of people there. It's very engaging. It's very lean forward. There's a lot of custom experiences that can be accessed through it. I think that, in this time, people are looking for new forms of entertainment and really trying to understand kind of what it is that they can be doing and maintain a sense of connection and connectivity into their friends, their fans. I mean, we've certainly seen the rise of esports in this time, even more so than we had before. You've got players like Kevin Durant who are hosting tournaments so that they can maintain a connection with their fans along the way. And I think that's something we're going to continue to see more and more of. And I think that really communal aspect is a big part of why we're seeing such a rise of what we're seeing in the gaming community right now.
Does Verizon Media have any metrics as to how much the audience has increased since this all started?
Yeah, I mean, it's on pace with what we're seeing in streaming. I mean, there was a recent study that we looked at that said that the rise of gaming, in particular console gaming, has risen about 65% during this time. We've seen a bigger rise, I think, in the daytime activity. And I think that's really interesting as you're looking at, again, things like esports. Things like streaming, like platforms like Mixer, Twitch, and others are really creating this new form of entertainment. And so the rise that we're seeing across the Verizon network, again, particularly in daytime traffic coming from gaming and console devices, has gone up considerably, and that's something that we're looking to take advantage of.
What are the games? There must be certain games that are doing better than others right now. So what would you say would be the top ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of some of the usual suspects in the last couple of years. Apex Legends is certainly a big one. Call of Duty, and as they continue to launch their titles. Fortnite, certainly one of the biggest ones in the world and continues to be. And then I think anything that's got a communal aspect. And one thing I think is really interesting is how can we continue to get people together in this time where we are all social distance and we're all being told to be at home and stay home as much as possible. And so you're seeing the rise of sort of parties that are happening with gaming as a backdrop. And a guy on our team actually started pioneering this with hosting a birthday party for his 9-year-old son within the Minecraft world. And we're seeing others do that in other places, similar Fortnite and other, where there's sort of multiplayer and you can connect and stay connected to your friends within a world that you know well and within a platform. And I think that those are some of the titles that we're really starting to see pop more, as the ones that have that sort of multiplayer and communal aspect to them. And then it's ones that you can be accessed on the mobile device as well are starting to increase.
So as far as advertising goes, though, what does this mean for brands or advertisers who are looking for another place to advertise? Obviously, a lot of the traditional games have gone away, live sports have gone away. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good question too. I think we are looking at what's the best way to sort of help brands navigate through this. And we've done a lot of this work in counseling our clients on the programs that they put on the Xbox platform. I think there's a couple main principles that we look at. What is a way that you can stay authentic, not only to your brand, but also to the platform itself? And what's a way that you can drive greater engagement? And I think using and leveraging the power of the console, anything you can do with the controller, you can ultimately do in an ad experience. So is that engaging with video assets? Is that taking a tour of something using 360 video? And I think we've seen a really interesting use of custom experiences that can drive that greater engagement. I mean, we see minutes, if not double-digit minutes of engagement in some of the experiences that get created. And I think also taking advantage of different moments in time and really kind of understand, how does a brand want to engage with its audience, and really not just its audience, but its audience on the platform. And sort of the gamer, I think, that has a perception of it's the teenager in the basement, and that's not necessarily true. We talked before about the gaming console being a living room device. And that means you're engaging with, in many cases, the entire family at a time, or even subsets of the family at different times. And so understanding who the user is and who the gamer is, and making sure that you're able to create that authentic experience for them. The other tenet, I would say, something at Verizon Media that we're making sure that we are helping counsel our clients on, is really being nimble and creative during this time. I mean, the world is changing in a way that none of us could have predicted even a month ago. And so understanding, again, how to stay authentic to your brand, but also how to make sure that you are putting the right message in market, not to be seen as necessarily opportunistic, but helping guide people through this time and sort of being there as a way to help someone either spend their time or connect with other people, or whatever sort of the goal of the brand is.
Wow, there's a lot going on. So actually, now that we're a few minutes in, I just want to say, hey, if you just joined us in midstream, I'm John Dioso, the editor of Ad Age Studio 30. This is Ad Age 20-Minute Take, and I'm pleased to be joined by Mike Brunick from Verizon Media. And also, I just want to recognize some of the people who are reaching out to us today. We've got Kathy from Kentucky, Sarah from Colorado. I feel like a weatherman here. Sarah from Colorado, Amanda from Scotland, awesome. Tony from California, Maria from Pennsylvania, and Ahmad from Saudi Arabia. We are all the way in Saudi Arabia, Mike. This is
wow. Listen, gaming is a global phenomenon. There's no question about it. And we're seeing large increases in gaming activity happening in many other markets as well. And I think that's something that is going to continue. Yeah,
I mean, is there a difference between what's going on in the U.S. and around the world, or is it kind of equalizing?
There's still considerably more mobile gaming internationally, particularly in Asia and Asia Pacific. We see a little bit of a difference in titles that are being played, but for the most part, a lot of the main themes hold true. The rise of esports is a global phenomenon. The rise of some of the streaming platforms that I mentioned before are also a global phenomenon. And I think the two tenets of making sure that we are providing a way of communal behavior, that sense of community, is also something that we're seeing pretty consistently.
Great. I'm gonna get a question. We got a question from the internet from Starsky. I don't know if that's his real name. Starsky on LinkedIn. Will SVOD or SVOD start to decrease when the average household income becomes less? What do you have to say about that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, at some point, we as consumers are going to have to figure out what it is that we're able and willing to pay for on a monthly basis. I think it's sort of in its infancy right now, and what the streaming services look like from a subscription model standpoint. I mean, we're trying to, as cord cutting moves away from the legacy bundle of paying, let's call it $200 for a cable bill, At some point, a consumer's going to decide what they're willing to pay for to sort of tick back up to that level. I also think ease of use is going to be a really interesting and important one. It's one thing where I actually think console gaming devices are helpful in that they are an aggregator of different subscription services. And so to the extent that either you can have them all, access them all in one place, or even bundle subscription services. I mean, that's one thing that our Verizon Wireless unit did was, offered Disney Plus as a benefit to Verizon Wireless subscribers. And so I think as those kind of mechanics continue to play out, that'll be something that'll be helpful in the continued sort of expansion of some of those streaming services.
Also, let's go back into the gaming a little bit. Are there any new developments or trends in gaming that you've seen over the past few weeks that have developed because of what's been going on?
Because of people staying at home, nothing more really that I can point to, other than, I mean, I think that the getting people together in a party. I think that, again, leveraging the communal aspects of services like Xbox Live, where you are all connected and you are all able to play a game together, talk to each other. I think that it's one of the most important things in sort of this time, is that ability to maintain that sense of connection. I also think and I mentioned this before too, but we're seeing this play out in professional sports. And I mentioned Kevin Durant before, but as you see athletes wanting to maintain a connection into their fan base in a world where live sports is essentially at this point gone from culture. What's a way that those celebrities and those brands really can maintain a sense of connection to their fan base? And I think we're going to see more of that. We've also seen some of those sports leagues bring their wares online. We've seen virtual NASCAR races. We're seeing a lot more virtual gaming tournaments, particularly in NBA. And I think that as long as we're in this period, I think is going to continue to grow.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for talking about esports. I wanted to go into that a little bit more, because I still don't think, I mean, it's been happening for a while. It's been developing a lot over the past couple of years, at least, or longer. I don't think a lot of people are aware of how big esports have gotten. I think there was something recently where Fox, there was, I think it was like some indie race that was called off, obviously, because of coronavirus. Yeah. And then they did a virtual version of it online, and it got something along the lines of 500,000 or a million people to watch a game online. And I think that's a phenomenon that a lot of people who are not part of the gaming community don't quite get, that there are people, say, going onto Twitch or Mixer and watching people play video games online as an entertainment.
Yeah. And look, it's an important distinction. That streaming is one aspect of it, which is you're watching someone else play, and you have someone that you're engaging with, and you're a fan of them, and you're rooting them on, and kind of trying to help them achieve whatever the goals that there are. But also then there's esports, which is really, it's competitive gaming, and companies are investing a lot in their ability to drive competitive gaming. There's a lot of big teams out there, and another interesting thing that we've done as a part of Verizon is the development of our 5G labs. We are sponsoring and hosting a gaming team in our 5G lab in LA. And I think part of that is to help pay off the future of what 5G can bring to gaming, but it's also to really invest in the growth of what is becoming a really interesting competitive environment. I think we're seeing a little bit on the sidelines of it right now because of the social distancing and separation that we're experiencing. But it is something that we do expect to continue to grow in that same competitive environment.
Yeah, I mean, talking about getting competitive, I mean, a lot of the esports athletes are on the same lines as many of the professional athletes. I think that Ninja just said, who's probably the biggest name in esports, just signed a deal to go away from Twitch to go to Mixer for something along the lines of $20 to $30 million, which makes me question so many life choices.
Yeah, you and a lot of other people. Yeah, and look, I mean, there was a massive Fortnite competition that was held in Arthur Ashe Stadium last year, and a 13-year-old won several $1 million playing a game. And it is definitely real, and it is also highly competitive. I mean, they train, they get coaching, they are constantly evolving and trying to figure out how to be better at their craft. I mean, it's truly a competitive environment.
Great. Okay, we got a couple more questions coming in over the internet. A question from Joe on LinkedIn. What are some examples of brands and businesses that you think are doing it really well in the gaming space?
And so, again, a good question. I think we have to be a little bit careful and kind of talking too much about what our brands are doing on the platform itself. I think the best examples we can point to are ones that are kind of in the public sphere around. So TurboTax did a really interesting competition and sponsorship around the Super Bowl that got a lot of press and a lot of exposure that I think was really interesting. For them, it's taking advantage of a moment in time. Obviously, there is a time box or time-based experience for them in terms of when their customer base comes through for tax season. And Super Bowl is certainly a big event, and they kind of surround that experience with a lot of different touch points with their consumers, and one of them being a pretty substantial and really interesting competition and sponsorship that was on Xbox. So I think that checks a lot of boxes, and one of the things that we typically are helping counsel our clients on as they're developing their experiences, which is know who your consumer and customer is. Find an authentic and engaging way to connect with them, and then pay it off in a really creative experience. And I think those are the ones that are doing it best, are the ones that are able to stay authentic to both themselves and who their customer is, and do it in a way that's going to drive that kind of engagement, that is going to make people want to do it rather than sort of be forced into doing it.
And another question, great question from online along the same lines, is from Mushy Beef, also not his real name, on YouTube. Do you think the value of ads and broadcast rights in esports will reach that of traditional sports?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's going to get to a point where it's going to compete with it, sure. I also think we're going to have more choices in where we consume that content. I mean, the notion of broadcast rights is a really interesting one, especially when you start talking about how that shows and lives on different devices. And we're starting to see this in the bifurcation of live even sports, including the NFL, is who's got the rights to show it on a mobile phone versus a connected TV versus a broadcast stream. And I do think that we'll see similar versions of that as the rights to broadcasting that kind of content start to come out as well. So I think that it's a lot of it's going to depend on what size of audience. I mean, part of the reason why NFL continues to be as big as it is, and same with NBA, is that they're big. And you can get your content in front of a lot of eyeballs in one place. As we follow what consumer behavior is and where they're engaging with content on certain devices and at different times. The live is an interesting time to be able to broadcast something, but that doesn't mean it's the only time someone sees something. I mean, there's time shifted, there's VOD, and some of these could live in that realm and have maybe different rights to them. So I think I would probably guess more that we're going to see some of the rights deals for big sports start to come down a little bit as people have more options for where and when they can consume that content, as that content starts to live on different devices and in different places.
Great. Okay, I'm going to give you a little break now. This is the fun part, where we're going to talk about a little bit of, thanks, Mushy Beef. He appreciates the answer. So you just told me recently you just got back from a staycation, which is, was it the most anticlimactic thing that you possibly could have done? It was take vacation during this time?
No, it wasn't that bad. Look, I mean, time away, getting to unplug is always good, time with your kids. But yeah, a lot of movement from the front yard to the backyard to the patio. And the weather here has been relatively nice in Los Angeles, so that's been helpful. Definitely a lot of bike rides around the neighborhood. But yeah, it was not the original spring break trip that we had planned, that's for sure.
So when things go back to normal, what's the thing you're most looking forward to doing?
Ooh, I'd say traveling again. Travel both for work and getting in front of people. And I think that we underestimate at times what connection looks like for us as humans. And I think, being in the same room with someone is always better. And I do think that being able to get back to some version of that, I think will be really helpful for us, as both from a business standpoint, from a personal standpoint, and being able to actually take a real trip again. And also just from a community standpoint, I think the one thing that this experience has shown is that we are all in this together. I think that's one of the most important lessons that we can take from this is that this is a non-discriminatory affair. This is something that we are all experiencing, and we're all experiencing it together.
Right, and then back to the regular questions. We have about a minute left. To wrap it up, I just want to say, like I said, things will go back to normal, whatever normal means. Do you think that what's been going on in the gaming world specifically, as it's blown up so much these past few weeks while we've been, in quarantine, do you think it's going to go back to normal? Do you think the numbers will come back down? Do you think or do you think there's been a permanent change?
Look, I think there's been a permanent change in the interaction with the larger overall platform of gaming. The one thing that we can't really pay off yet today, but is something that we're actively looking towards is, what does the enhanced version of mobile gaming look like? And it's one of the big bets that Verizon, our parent company, is making. And we're looking at gaming as one of the biggest use cases for the rollout of 5G technology. And certainly Xbox is doing it as well with their announcement of their cloud platform. The idea of being able to use the power of console gaming on a mobile device or outside the home, just something that's been largely underrealized to date. And I think that it's one of the big opportunities that now that we have had a larger overall population, not just exposed to, but spending time with what gaming looks like, how that will continue to change and continue to expand as we are able to do some of those capabilities, again, outside the home and outside what some of the devices are that we are used to.
Well, that's great. I can't think of a better way to wrap up this conversation today. Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. This was Ad Age's 20-minute take with Mike Brunick from Verizon Media. We'll be coming back in a little bit. Our next episode will be on April 28th. Just check out adage.com and our social media channels and for more from Ad Age. And that's signing off. John Dioso from Ad Age. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, take care, Mike.
Bye.